Welcome to episode 13 of the Soccer Card Collective. I've got a special guest today, Dan from at Dreamcast Cards. This episode I am entitling What's in a Serial Number? We'll get into other topics, involving serial numbers and other topics as well, but that was the topic we're going to start out with first. For those, I've been following Dan for years, but there were some topics that I thought he was uniquely able to discuss in a way that I thought was interesting, that I've found interesting over the years. But I guess before we get into our conversation, how are you doing, Dan?
Good morning, James. And it is morning that we're recording this, but I have my coffee and I'm excited to nerd out with you a little bit. I am doing well.
All right. Yeah. So I guess briefly, like I said, I've been following you for years and, intimately aware of your page and your collecting style, but it'd be good for some of the viewers who aren't as familiar with you, maybe from Instagram, or you've had a few podcast episodes with other creators in the past, but for those who aren't aware of what you collect, just for you to, maybe give an overview of your general approach and what you collect.
Yeah, so I've been collecting for a little over 5 years now. And I think, over the past probably 2 years, 2.5 years, which is relatively not a long time in this space, I've really honed in on, if you look at my page, you'll see it. But I love golds and I love jersey numbered cards. So I would say my collecting approach, though, really boils down to Thierry Henry as like a PC player. That's been since day one, finding his playing days stuff. And we'll talk about post playing days stuff today. And are those cards even important? But, from there, I accumulated a lot really quickly because a lot of the pre-modern cards were relatively easy to find with a little bit of patience and like diligence around looking at my eBay searches. I accumulated a lot of those cards, and then I was like, what do I do next? And then I guess long story short, I started getting into modern more, and not just flipping modern. And I think we all have a tendency to flip when we start buying modern cards. You get in the breaks, you get kind of used to that. But I really started to hone in on like jersey numbered cards as this is a sort of one of one to me. So jersey numbered cards, finding Prism golds because they're out of 10. And then from there, I'd say and James, you've been doing a great job of talking about this in your like really awesome content series that you've been doing the past couple of months. But just like discovery, like I'm really enjoying, I post some just random stuff from 2015 of Messi, or, really it just kind of comes down to like, if something comes across my feed and I think it's cool and it's a legendary player, I will buy it. So that is all to say I have a focus on Thierry Henry. I like finding jersey numbered cards, especially Arsenal. I should say that, more or less a team collector now in a way. And then really just from there, I'm like ADHD guy of finding cool stuff that I think is undervalued and you don't see often.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of the points that we want to dig into. I want to dig into more today, but I think one key thing going back to kind of the collecting philosophy, one of the reasons that soccer was what I ended up diving into, because I'm a big sports fan in general. The space, the ability to still discover things is still alive in soccer card collecting, which didn't feel as alive to me as it did in other sports. As longer I've been in it, you do see that there is discovery happening, to a certain extent in other sports, or new things become valued over time. But there is really, everyone talks about, soccer hasn't even developed yet. I kind of understand what that means more now than I did, a few years ago. I was like, it's all out there. I see everything. And it's after a while, you're like, oh no, it's I guess you call it the Dunning-Kruger curve. It's like, you think at the beginning when you know a little that you know a lot. And then the more you know, you're like, actually, there's so much more that I don't know. And so I'm kind of making my way, down that kind of that hill of confidence in the Dunning-Kruger curve as far as my what I feel like I do and don't know about the space and collecting and whatnot.
Totally.
But, but yeah, so I'll bring up your page now to kind of just give people a nice eye candy for the YouTube page. Like I said, his handle is at Dreamcast Cards, so you guys can make a follow him if you haven't already. But so yeah, just to give kind of a flavor, as we talk through. So yeah, so like I said, the episode I loosely titled it "What's in a Serial Number" because there are a few collectors, who I follow that really kind of highlight serial number, but you were definitely one of the first ones that I really noticed that intentional search for these. And I'm a bit jealous because I feel like I'd like to buy them, but finding them it seems to be my problem. They don't, occasionally you see them pop up at auction, but can you talk a little bit about, how you go about, even finding serial numbers? I mean, you don't have to give away all your secrets, but is it is it just safe searches, like private deals, I guess a mix of both type of thing, or
mix of both? Yeah,
okay.
It's James, it's a lot of clicking on the photo, and zooming in, and hopefully you can kind of see it. Sometimes I'll take a picture with my phone and I'll like zoom in even more and like adjust the contrast of the picture. So it's a little nutty on my end to get there. Some I see it more listed in the auction titles now that it's becoming a more desirable attribute. It's a niche, of course, but like people are listing them in the auction titles now. But I'd say even like, I want to say that at least one of the Saka Stadium Club Chrome cards that's on the screen right now, it's one of the lower two, was just one of those that was not listed in the title at all. And it didn't mention it jersey number in the description. And that's sort of, it's part of that chase. And I don't know if that's a good way to spend my time, crawling through these auctions and trying to find the needle in the haystack. But that's been my chase. And it's been fun for me. So it's a bit of that, becoming once you start accumulating jersey numbered cards and you're talking to people about it, etc., it's like anything. People start to know that you collect these cards. So thankfully I've had, people reach out to me and sell me gold and other jersey numbered cards for a reasonable price, which I really appreciate that. As somebody who considers themselves in this for the collection, I'm not trying to flip. I love when cards find their homes. But there are people too who hang me out to dry a little bit, and that's okay too. Like if you're in it for the money and you want, me to spend a premium on a jersey number card I really want, hey, I'm liable to do that too.
Yeah. So I mean, sometimes you can rationalize the premium, and this person like brought this card to me. It's like there is some value in discovery, and that's with flippers, dealers, that's kind of, as much as you complain about them trying to extract money, there is it gives them an incentive to discover these cards and bring them to you. So that when people talk about the value in kind of the flippers and dealers, that is the value. If you have a busy life and you don't have time to just be searching card shows and all these sorts of things, there is value in the people who do that and bring these cards that fit in your collection, to your attention, type of thing. So yeah, I have pulled up now essentially your Topps gold refractor jersey number. I assume you probably have even more of these, but these are the 20. So the ones that I have on the screen are the 2022 was it UEFA Club Competitions Chrome, the 2022 Finest Flashbacks Club Competitions Chrome, the 2022 Stadium Club Chrome, and the 2023 Stadium Club Chrome.
Yep.
I guess just before I get into my point, whenever I look at the Stadium Clubs, I'm just like, oh gosh, I feel like they're pretty routinely my favorite cards from players from every year in terms of like photography, and especially when they get that nice perfect mix of kind of the color flood wash through the background. I think some years are better than others, but yeah, that always really
Same.
strikes
Yep.
me about those every time I see them, even next to the just the regular Topps Chrome. But anyway, so one of the reasons I want to start with these is that there's a lot of talk about Topps just because they're taking over the basketball and NFL licenses, and like, oh my God, their gold is out of 50. God, it's so many. Like, the gold out of 10 for Prism was perfect. And so you're just like, are people going to continue to collect gold, or is now it no longer rare enough and everyone's going to gravitate toward red, or I guess black? I mean, but the problem now is that they've like saturated the lower number parallels with, the black or the geometrics, and I guess they've different other colors in those like lower, or even the reds. That's not the pure red anymore. It's like red stripes and red geometrics. I mean, those have creeped into soccer, but I see that chasing, if you really like gold and the pure gold, obviously people, I think the superfractors are kind of legendary, but those seem to be just so needle in a haystack, and kind of go for crazy prices when they come up. But
yeah,
I don't know how much of your mindset just having the jersey number chase for these golds. It almost seems like a perfect mix of chasing golds, but also giving it that extra little special juice that that you can get it just by not, out of 50, you're like, oh, is there enough juice there to make me interested in the chase and things like that? But I don't know if you can talk a little bit about that, whether that was kind of your mindset when you kind of were going after these. Was that, does that sound like something you were thinking about, or you just were just kind of like, I like golds, and just kind of happened?
For sure. I think on a fundamental level, I was as I was had a couple years underneath me in the hobby, and I was like, what do I do? Like, I really had this idea in my head, and I've talked about this before, but building a standout collection. And I think, I take a lot of cues from the basketball market, and basketball, football collectors, and like, how do these guys keep appearing on my page or in my, in my algo?
Yeah.
And like, how do I become one of these guys? And I think in doing that, it's not just about, I don't, flexing is great and all, but I love the idea of creating something that I'm really proud of and can connect me with people. So with that in mind, the one-on-ones are always an option, if you have the financial means to do it. It's a space that I considered, but it'd be really difficult for me to do that. So it kind of was, and then to answer your question, I kind of fell into it through Asaka, the 2020 Prism Gold, which is his first year in Prism. It's a card I'd really wanted. I as somebody who was drawn towards the shiny, and there it is on the screen in the top left for those that are watching. So I fell into one of these cards, and I forget what the number was, but it was like 3 out of 10. And so I own this card, a different version of this card. And the card you're seeing on screen right now is the 7 out of 10. The 7 out of 10 became available probably in 2023, I want to say. And there was a Facebook post. And it's a card I'd been thinking about. I was like, I want to start to collect a current player, let's call him a prospect at the time, who's still, a career is very much in flux and developing, who's out of form currently. And it's a really interesting experience, collecting a current player, and that could be a whole hour-long podcast. Yeah. But essentially, this card was for sale. The Gold Wave 7 out of 10 from 2020 Prism, which is kind of like the companion to this card, was for sale, and I just went for it. And it's a card I'd been thinking about. I was like, I'm not gonna. The Nebula sold at one point, just to go back to the one-on-one thing, as I was considering my options. Listed for sale for $10K on eBay. I think it sold for $8K. and I thought, gosh, that'd be a huge consolidation for me. So in my mind, I was like, what is like the second best card, or what's the second most desirable? And of course, there's the black one of one as well in this set. So what's like a top echelon card that I could afford that really is a reasonable price for me? And it's these, So I got it, and that really opened the floodgates for me. I've been chasing them ever since. I think I'm up to like 35 of these. A lot of them are
Jer-
gold for
Jersey number
sockeye.
sock. Okay. Oh, but that
Yes.
includes maybe some red.
I have
Jersey
a
number
couple
too.
reds. I have some, there's some oranges in there. There's some cracked ice. There's stuff like that. And it's really, I joke with Travis at Harry Kane's Cards, like I'm just trying to keep up with him because he has an incredible collection. Weekend Up Nate is another jersey number collector who, again, these guys were doing it, before me and around the same time as me, posting at the time, and they were really partial. I'd be remiss if I didn't, give them some credit
Yeah.
for that too, because they really stood out to me. Like, wow, where do you find these? They're like one of ones in spirit.
Yeah.
And part of my thought process with this too is like, I like the Arsenal jersey numbered ones the best. James, you were talking about the out of 50s. Well, you can kind of always buy an out of 50 card. Like that will be a card you can find, but the jersey number will not be one you can find. So when I land one, when one's on my, is up for auction, I'm pretty aggressive for it. And God, it's the most fun chase for me, and it's really stuck.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. When after you're doing this for a long time, you need something that it's not easy and something that, it's just kind of fun. And when you land it hits, still has that juice when it hits. Because if you're just collecting out of 50, especially for the modern stuff, like you said, for the most part, you can probably always find one. But with the jersey number, it's definitely the needle in the haystack. But if you really want to make, like you said, you were looking to make your collection stand out, and it really.
Can I ask? Oh, sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about your Messi 17 Chrome jersey number 10 out of 10. Like, what was your thought process going into that?
Well, yeah. I think I mentioned a little bit about it in previous ones, but I guess one detail that I had left out is that I think around that same time, maybe within a month of the auction going up, someone had offered me a non-jersey numbered PSA 8 version of it. Didn't quote a price, but but privately told me they were accepting offers, and I was like, the problem was that not one of those hadn't really sold publicly. I had known what a couple had gone on the private market for. A couple of the autograph versions had sold, and I knew what this guy had paid for it because it was like a public sale off eBay or something like that. So I was willing to offer, give him a little bit of a premium for having bought it, type of thing. But the market had dropped, I think, since he had kind of bought it. It was during that real down period, and I think, so I guess full transparency, I think I brought up last episode, the red Messi, I ended up buying it on Golden for $40K. But when the PSA 8 was sold to me, I wasn't willing to go anywhere above $30K for that one. And so big prices made me really uncomfortable, just obviously even talking about cards in that price range. But knowing that it was such a special card, I could wrap my head around it more so than a lot of other cards that go for, in that price range. But the seller wasn't willing to kind of go for the price that I was willing to pay for it at that point. But knowing my cap on that PSA 8 was, $30K at that point. But when the jersey number came up, I kind of was just wrapping my head around, should I buy and the jersey number 10 out of 10 was a PSA 7. So I was trying to wrap my head around, is it better to get a higher grade? Is it better jersey number? And I just kind of wrapping my head around the fact that, if you have, especially an out of 10 card, you can have multiple, obviously, PSA 10s. And so, and obviously PSA 8's not even really that much higher than a PSA 7. It's probably not really that much difference in the grand scheme of things in my mind in general. But I realized I was definitely willing to go considerably more to have the jersey number copy of it. And I guess the special thing for me is that, having collecting the red set, it was almost like the jersey number copy in the set that I collect in like the whole grand scheme of my collection. Having that was, maybe even more important to me than, having the superfractor. I probably would trade it for like a superfractor, but because it's just such an iconic thing. But in a way, the red, in a lot of ways, it would probably give me more joy than even owning the superfractor. But yeah, but as far as like in terms of a standout of the 2017 Topps Chrome Red, the jersey number 10 out of 10, it's always going to stand out amongst all the other red copies, no matter what happens with the grading. And so I think I did mention it last episode, and you were kind of alluding to it offline before we got on, that I would rather have the jersey number than a PSA 10 copy. And I don't think everyone would have that same mindset, but the jersey number will always be, kind of a card that stands out in that, lot of 10 out there. So it's, like I said, and like I said in the prior podcast, I wouldn't trade it for the PSA 10 for that reason. And I don't know if that's probably, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like that probably would be your mindset, probably in a sense too, with any of like even the Prism, especially the Prism out of 10s and the golds probably. And I think you mentioned you have you have your own example of a Messi. Let's see if I think where is it? That's where you maybe make kind of a similar, and so that gets into like kind of when it comes to this discussion, as much as it's just, we're touchy-feely collectors who are collecting for our collection, you do have to think about price you're willing to pay. Did I pass it?
Scroll down a little bit.
Oh, scroll down.
Stop. There it is. Yeah. So this is the, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Price and how much, like the quote unquote premium. Everyone talks about, oh, what's the jersey number premium? Oh, I think the jersey premium should be more. Oh no, I think it should be less. People have lots of opinions on this, and whether you're in the weeds actually collecting them, you actually have to make those real decisions when you're deciding what your bid is going to be for these cards. And yeah, you can go and describe the card that I pulled up here from your page.
James has up the 2020 Topps Chrome Champions League Gold Refractor Lionel Messi. Horizontal card, pink Barca kit. Really cool photo, as is often the times the case in Chrome. And what I was telling James is that when I saw this card come to auction, I believe it was PWCC or Fanatics Weekly, 3 or 4 months before the Messi market exploded last summer, which would be 2025. And I was kind of in this place where I was like, I'm going to buy some nice Messi cards. And I had no idea what was looming for the Messi market, which has exploded since. But this card was, at the top of my wish list for this auction. The PSA 10s, again, this is an out of 50 card. So there are quite a few of them for those of us who are in the space, like, doing it every day. You can find an out of 50 card. So I was like,
there's a PSA 10 on auction right now at Fanatics. So just for context.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So but anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I wonder what that'll go for. Because at the time, the PSA 10s were, I think, around $1,000. And I saw this one. It's a PSA 8. And I can't remember if it said jersey number in the listing title or not, but knew it was a jersey numbered. And I think others did too, because towards the end of the auction, it creeped up to that PSA 10 value. So, this was the time too where I was like, oh, maybe it'll go for PSA 8 price. And that was, significantly less, maybe $600-700 at the time. And so it hits that $1,000 threshold. And I'm like, if it stops here, I'm totally fine. Like this, I am like you, James, I would rather have the number that's printed on the card versus the number that's printed on the little label in the plastic. So, it sold right, pretty much at that PSA 10 value. And, I probably would have gone even higher And that's something, it's something maybe we can tug on a little bit because it's a hot take that for some that you'd spend more on a PSA 8 than a 10, and who cares? I see every now and then I'll see a story about an Instagram story, somebody just musing about like, who cares about jersey numbers? Like, why does it matter? And I think that's true. It's a valid question. Why does it matter? And why does any of this matter? Because to me, I was thinking about this, and maybe we can deconstruct this a little bit, and hopefully not piss off too many people. But like for me, the hobby is pure chaos to begin with. Like there are so many approaches, there's so many cards, the market fluctuates so much. So I think it's really on us to give it meaning. And for me, I was always I've come to this conclusion too. And those who know me, like I don't grade. I haven't graded in a while.
Yeah, I haven't graded in 4 years.
Yeah. And there's reasons for that. That could be another pod unto itself. But I look at it like, hey man, the grading company gave this a number. And oftentimes this number is imperceivable to our eyeballs, right? Like you kind of, sometimes people talk about like, well, I don't have a microscope to see the condition of the card. And for me, I'm like in this place where I'm like deconstructing why I do what I do, like trying to build something I'm really proud of and I'll have for a long time, a collection that I'm holding on to for decades, hopefully. And for me, it's not the grading, the grading company flavor of the moment grade. It's the number that's like printed permanently, objectively on the card. And I think that, that for me carries a symbolic scarcity that, it's a blend of a lot of things, but my psychology around this is like, this is the approach for me. And I've stacked, I don't even know how many jersey numbered cards I have now. It's probably over 100. James could not be happier about it doing it this way. So
yeah,
what'd you think of that?
No, that's perfect. I mean, it's essentially hits on so many things that I just think is interesting about deconstructing like approaches in this space. And I had the same kind of epiphany. There was so much energy around PSA 10s, especially like 5 years ago when we started, like even base cards, PSA 10s, everyone's like, oh, PSA 10s, what's going to be collectible? And I even, even the last episode with Brian Cajun Cardboard, he kind of deconstructed the fact that he was a PSA 10 guy. He was collecting all the Jordan's PSA 10s, and he's like, I'm selling them all because I want the rarest stuff. And that was really the epiphany I had, a few years ago, that I want to go after cards that I want, regardless of what the grade is. And I want to have a reason to collect them, just for the card itself. And the grade is just an ancillary, detail in terms of like the story of the card. I mean, having the PSA 10, the best graded copy of a card, it does add some juice, but I didn't want that to be the reason that I wanted the card. And I think that's really what you're tying into.
Yeah. And you collect ghosts too. And I think that's the other thing. Like, grading serves a fantastic purpose in the space, which is like, how do we in this space create even more scarcity or create more demand? And it's a completely different conversation in my opinion, between modern cards and pre-modern cards and vintage, right? Where vintage eye appeal is everything. So grading is like really matters, but you collect you collect serial numbered cards from one of the premier soccer sets of all time. And you collect the out of 10s and the out of 50s, which you can never find. So, I mean, does it matter if a red messy jersey numbered card is a PSA 7 versus a 10? I'll tell you what, when I look at that card, James, doesn't matter one bit to me. But I want to be careful too. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I love PSA 10s and I collect PSA 10s, and if you're doing like a 2017 Topps Chrome refractor set and you're going for all gems, or like Cajun, for instance, he's doing the 2014 Prism World Cup auto set in PSA 10s. Like that is standout to me. And it's a lot harder to find the 10s of those cards than the 9s and the 8s. And it'll take a bigger chunk out of your budget.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to create a standout collection, and I think what we're talking about is, just to say it out loud, is one way to do it in this chaotic space.
Yeah, I think there are definitely, I mean, in terms of if you want to create, something stand out, PSA 10, there are certain cards, for non-jersey numbered, or sorry, non-serial numbered cards, that I think it comes into play more and more in terms of understanding kind of, or, there's a scarcity and kind of an allure to it. So, I mean, that's what you're seeing in the market now. A lot of these like case hits and stuff that are non-serial numbered. I think people really are really using the PSA 10 as a chase feature of those. And I think if you add it as a feature of kind of the chase that you're doing, that's where I see the, kind of the fun and value in it. If you're doing it just for value, you're going to be, I don't know, you can rapidly start spending more than, kind of more of a value than the card can maintain over time. If you're doing it purely for value. And I think, with the premiums, you see that escalating rapidly. You kind of have to, look in the mirror a second, do I really want to pay? I think Cajun mentioned it. There was one Jordan card that was 42x between a 9 and a 10. And you're just like, especially if you get into that territory, it's like, I'm not sure if that's, the route I want to go in terms of this. But yeah, if you're in the, the 2x, 3x, I mean, that's a very comfortable kind of premium, I think, to pay for a PSA 10, say over a PSA 9 for, a lot of cards. And so, I think you're in especially 2x, you're definitely in a safe space. 3x, it's kind of where I start to kind of, is it really worth that much, worth it to me that much more to have it when I could buy, 3 PSA 9s of whatever I'm collecting versus the one PSA 10. And I would, it's not like 3 duplicate 9s. It would be 3 like, separate cards from like a set or a series I'm collecting type of thing. And that's kind of the decision I make a lot of times. I'm just like, I would rather, if I'm building out something like a set, rather than spend a bunch of money on a PSA 10, I'd rather, notch 3 off the list, maybe in a grade lower. And especially like you talked about, there's a little bit of arbitrariness with this stuff you can't see with the eyes. You could crack a PSA 9, it'll come back at 10. You could crack a PSA 10, it'll come back at 9. And that like, that formula in my head that, Schrodinger's cat of like, these cards, like, they're not, there's like they live in like a space of, they're not, they're not like 100% a 10 or they're not 100% a 9, like, so it's that uncertainty of that just kind of plays into my my physics brain. But that's, that's kind of my, I think everyone, if you like feel good about what you're doing and it's and you enjoy it, I mean, that's obviously the end of the day, when you pick an approach that works for you and all this. And I guess so one other thread that you're starting to pull is the objective nature of, and just the value of this serial number stamped on a card. And that is something, whether it's a 1-of-1 stamp, whether it's a jersey number stamp, whether it's just serial number, just in general, like a card, we talked about a lot of these pre-modern cards don't have serial numbers, but if they did have serial numbers, what would that do to their value? You see what the rubies from like the pre-modern era, like those go for huge premiums, I think large in part just because they have a serial number, even though it's out of 100. So what is it about this, just this like small gold foil number on a card that just gets our brains kind of just, I need it. Like, is it, and you talked about it's almost that objective nature of it. I don't know if you have any opinions on that kind of idea of like what this just stamp, and one card, I guess not in the soccer space, that just completely kind of just had my brain churning was the 97 Ultra Masterpiece Jordan that just sold for, what was it, like, what did it sell, like 2 million, I think. Jeez. Because it is that and the platinum like version of it, which is numbered out of 100. I think they were literally the exact same cards, and they just stamped the 1-of-1 Masterpiece on the 1-of-1 version.
Right.
and that goes for many multiples what the exact same card except for the stamp. And so that was one thing that really that was like, you know, really like I was like, oh, you know, I got to have Dan's the guy I want to have on to kind of discuss this, because I know he kind of appreciates that, you know, that value of a stamp. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of that. A lot of stuff I kind of touched on there.
Well, that sale in particular, you know, like you said, you know, the out of 100 version between the 1 of 1, I believe, look identical when you look at the front of the cart,
Yeah.
right?
And I hear what I heard is that it was actually they were printed out of 150, and then they just ended up stamping ended up changing it to 100, and then so I think they just took the same lot of same printing and they just stamped a 1 of 1 on it. That's my impression on what happened. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
You know, it'd be interesting to think about, like, I'm trying to think about like what's the soccer equivalent of that too, a little bit. Like we'll have to think on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're.
You know, it would. So if I were a Jordan collector and I had the means to buy a card like that, I would absolutely go for the 1 of 1. But that said, it would bug me a little bit too that it looks the same from the front, just slightly. But I think at the end of the day, it's really about, like, these cards are all from, you know, you've talked a lot about different sets in your series that you've done. You had a fantastic episode, James, on just like Panini's golden era, and I encourage people to go back and listen to that one from a month ago, where you talk about, you know, when Panini was really cooking with fire, 2014 to 2018 ish. Beautiful sets, a lot of legends, great checklists, and then just lower parallel levels, or a fewer amount of parallels involved, which makes the cards harder to find. And so, you know, like with that, and I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I think I totally lost my train of thought because I was thinking about those beautiful cards.
I don't know. I mean, are you talking about just like you could have been talking about just the total number of serial numbered cards is just so much less and things like that during that era. But
Yeah.
the modern age was when serial numbers, you know, essentially were introduced to soccer as far as like as a commodity, as something that soccer collectors looked at, and
let's get into that a little bit too when we go into the post playing days part of the convo. But, you know, for me, I go back to, I think, like, we have to give this meaning and make it, if you're in it for the long haul, like, how do you give it meaning? So, you know, like these jersey numbered cards in particular, they're not rare in print though, at the end of the day, right? Like, this Messi has 50 copies. So why is it more valuable? You know, you would ask, like, it's like, why is this something that we seek out and we care about? And I don't think there's you know, like Chris Hoge is doing a great series on the psychology of collecting currently, and I'd love to dig more into that. And I don't think I'm going to answer that question in any great way today, other than to say that, like, these are the cards that make me happy. And, you know, I don't want to sound anti-grading because I'm not, but like the number that's printed on the top of the card on the PSA slab or whatever grading company slab doesn't make me feel as warm and fuzzy as that's printed on the card. And that's really ultimately what it boils down to. And I think it's pretty cool once you start stacking them together. It's really cool to put them in a row. And James, I don't know if you've done this before, but like when you kind of put your jersey number cards together, it really forces you to actually go in and look at the card. And you're like, you know, I'll share my cards with other people and have them look at them. And they're like looking, and they're like checking, is this jersey number 2? And
yeah, there's,
you know, it's just one of those fun, dorky, enjoyable little moments that we have that really kind of keep me here. You know, it's one of those things that keeps me doing this every day.
Yeah, it almost signals to other collectors that you're in the weeds of this and you're really intentional with this. And I think that's what you're kind of referring to. I think you're almost signaling to other collectors, I'm serious about this. This is like a serious collection I'm trying to build. And that really
I'm slightly kooky.
Yeah, or it's not, it's like I'm not just looking for any old thing. I'm looking for the things that, that are just a little bit different. Just something
Yeah.
about it is just enough different that it signals, it's an extra, it's an extra excitement to the chase. It's an extra but it's just that signal of like what type of collector you are, I think. But yeah,
You know what? Sorry, can I interrupt real quick? I think that's
yeah,
a great point because we're in one of these sort of moments again in the hobby where things are exploding. Fanatics has come in, and there's a lot of like, you know, capitalist intent behind what's coming next and what's happening currently. And I think like I look at this like I want this to be sustainable. What's my and I've never been like even my musical choices, I'm not like a mainstream guy and I've always gravitated towards that. What's that little bit of like different
yeah,
approach? And so nail on the head, James. Like right
yeah,
there, like what's just a different way to approach this that um and then just period, like what's a
yeah,
different way to approach this and then put cards together that are the same so that you can build something that like this, look at what I've done, and I feel proud about it, right? So being different is very cool. I think the
yeah,
hobby is very much in a space. You were talking about the case hits. The case hits look great, and there's a whole breaking culture analysis to those, but
yeah,
there's a lot of sameness there. And so when I see those cards for the first few times from the latest Tops releases, I'm like, these look very cool. And then I keep seeing them. And if you do this long enough, you'll start to see those same cards and you'll be like, well, I've seen that card 1,000 times now. And it doesn't make that card bad, but there's an enjoyment. It's human nature where you're gonna, you listen to the same song 1,000 times, it's not going to be the same song anymore, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, there's, I mean, yeah, there's so many parallels you could probably draw to music in terms of, finding the indie band, and if other people find the indie band, it's maybe not quite as cool as what, if you're the unique one who has it, things like that, and um, but yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think intrinsically, and I guess humans have different degrees of it, but that whole contrarian streak, like in terms of you're telling me that's awesome, I'm gonna zag and like I'll show you what's awesome, like like and things like that. So I definitely have
yeah.
that. It just in my life in general, like growing up, my classic story I always tell everyone that my dad took me to UNC basketball games growing up, like growing up in like Durham Chapel Hill area. Got to see Michael Jordan when I was 3, and I ended up becoming a Duke fan when I was 7. I think have to be contrarian. My dad was just like, "What the heck happened? what the hell
Oh no, your
happened
poor
here?"
dad.
Yeah, so he had to pay for me to go to Duke and everything like that too. I bet writing those checks, he was probably just like, "Oh God." But I
So
don't know. I had to
somebody's listening right now and is like, oh man, these are the hobby hipsters right here. Listen to
Yeah, I
these
know.
guys.
Exactly. No, we're definitely the hobby hipsters, just like looking for that contrarian streak and all this. But
Yeah.
But yeah, so one thing that came to mind too when you were talking about the Panini era, then I think I'm going to have him on. But one collector who I've really enjoyed following, probably the last couple of years, just who's informed a lot of kind of the zags that I've made, is Damien at Retro Soccer Cards, and I'll probably won't go too deep into it because I'd like to have him on at some point to talk about it. But he was an OG. He was collecting the pre-modern at the time it came out in the 2000s, collecting the sets, and then he's alluded to the fact on some of his channel that when the number cards came out, he was just like, "What is this nonsense? Like I don't this is just absolutely manufactured." And so he didn't collect any of it, and I think he shows a little bit of regret in terms of not doing it. I think partially because of what has happened, and what the hobby kind of values now as far as the serial numbering goes. But I'm definitely going to pick his name about how his whole mindset got turned upside down when that Panini era, that modern era, really kicked about. But it's a really interesting, and that's the interesting thing about our space. A lot of us, like you and I, came around to the space after all that was out there and available. There aren't nearly as many people in the soccer space who were there before it, and I think we may have, I can't remember if I touched on it with Matt much, but I think that is a little bit of what has held pre-modern back, is there weren't a lot of people who were brought up in that pre-modern era before we were all kind of formed in this modern era where we're serial numbering was, and parallels was really what we saw, and it cultivated our tastes. But yeah, so that he's definitely that's definitely a thread that I'm probably going to pull on in the future as far as some of the logic behind that. And I guess as far as the serial number thing goes, I think you see people like with these polls. Even Chris Hoge the other day had this poll. He's like, "Oh, which one of these features do you value most about a card?" Was like, "Oh, is it the serial? The one of one stamp? Is it the set? All these things." And I'm just like, I've really come to the thing. If you try to single out just one of those things as being the most important thing, I don't think you can separate all of those things. You have to take holistically when you're talking about these cards. You can't just have one and not the other. Like it's really, all of those things are so intertwined. I feel like that.
Yep.
You have to take every card and take all of those features, put it together before you can make some comment on about like how much you want it. And I think when you talk about one of one, if it is a true one of one card, if it's a jersey number card, it's it's like the elements that everyone always talks about. It's like, yes, the stamp matters, and the rare, and the stamp gives it the quote unquote rarity. But I think the set it comes from is really important. The lineage of the set it comes from is so important. The visual appeal of the card, the visual appeal of the parallel itself, like the aesthetic that's put on it, so important. And so to try to single out which one of those matters more, I just think is a fool's errand, because every card has its own formula when you look at all those things together, and they all are all so important that I don't think you can ever separate which one is quote unquote more important. But that's,
so I saw that poll, and I voted on it. I'm curious, did you vote on it as well?
I did. I was like, I didn't want to, because I'm like, I can't choose this. This is just like,
I had trouble as well. I think you.
Yeah. I messaged him. I was like, what are you doing, man? I know you don't think this way, but I picked the set. So the lineage in the set and that's kind of how I've chosen to collect. You could probably predict that from just the way I collect, in a lot of ways. But
yep.
And the stamp for me, and it's like you look at it like with PMG stuff. It's just like, for me, almost like that out of 10 PMG is like more valuable than almost any of Jordan's one of ones. And so it's just, the set matters, and the lineage of the set and things like that matter. And they matter to me more than just like, say, just getting a card that's stamped one of one. But that being said, if it's a set you love and it's stamped one of one, I mean, that's just like, that juice on that is just out of control. So and Chris, in Chris's defense, the juice that he gives to cards is he's made his own checklist of a set of cards that are numbered one of one, and so that he's actually created his own meaning and like juice to kind of the checklist that he has formed. And so that's just, I mean, that's really, I mean, that's a whole, like I said, that's a whole nother podcast, creating your own set based off of characteristics of cards and things like that. So I don't know if there's any more threads you want to pull on that before we shift gears maybe a little bit.
Well, just in closing to that, I picked set as well. And I agree with everything else you said, which is like, it's usually a combination of all these things. But I think the other aspect, just to toss out there in regards to jersey number, is like, and you and I have talked about this in the past, which is like, I was somebody who was collecting this player, Alexander Lacazette from Arsenal, who was like over the hill and not a very beloved player at the time, towards the end of his tenure. But I was like trying to figure out what I was going to be collecting moving forward. And his cards were really cheap. So I was like finding, Prism Golds and Galactics and like all of these cards that were really hard to find. And they were, $20, $25. I've taken those learnings to the jersey number stuff. So I talked a lot about, I like golds, I like reds, I like, I just find beautiful cards that are have a low serial number. But I think I've had to sell jersey number cards, and then I've focused in on sets and particular parallels. So that's the other, let's say, focus I put on it is like I really, I like Prism, I like Select, I like field levels that you're showing here. These are
Yeah,
not jersey numbered.
yeah. I was about to
feel
say,
for
I was
those.
like, I was like, that'd be crazy work if these were all serial number or jersey number.
I know.
I couldn't remember.
So in thinking about it too, is like I've put in those sort of guardrails on it as well, which is like what are the sets I really, really like? That's not something that is objective at all. That's something subjective to me. I like the shiniest cards from some of the, the I don't know what you want to call them, but the more marquee sets from Panini in particular, and I'm gravitating towards tops with some of the red stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good lens for me to like not have, because if I bought every Sokka jersey numbered card that became available, I'd have 2 cases full, and I have limited space in my house. So
Yeah, yeah. So the guardrail gold, red, kind of good guardrails to put on, like that's the jersey number chase, especially.
Yep, and the sets.
Yeah.
Prism, Select, Optic, etc. Stadium Club Chrome, and then if there's a new set that really catches my eye, I think there's one called Top Simplicidad.
Simplicidad. Yeah,
Simplicidad.
Yeah.
It's very, in a way, it's very Stadium Chrome-esque in terms of the photography, but I believe it has a more of a paper foil, and I think those are especially beautiful, and I've been looking for those as well, just because it's a card that catches my eye, and then I'm like, I get a few of them together, and they're not expensive, and they fit right in with the rest.
Yeah, and I guess with the red, it just I've probably said this before, but just there's so many of the top teams, their color matches, and that gives it. I think that kind of gives it that cachet in soccer. Not only is it like one of the rarest parallels, but it's also the jersey number for so many of the top teams, including Arsenal. So, all right, I think that's a good spot to kind of switch gears a little bit. And the other thing that when we talk about modern sensibility, but we were fans of kind of the pre-modern era, you certainly highlighted at the top of the page here as your pre-modern PSA 10 or PSA 9 graded Henry's from the 2000s during his Arsenal stint, which classic Dreamcast jersey gives name to your page. For I guess the people who weren't around then don't understand what Dreamcast is, but any pre-modern fan knows the reference to Dreamcast from that classic run.
Crazy Taxi, what a great game! You remember that game for the Dreamcast?
Which one?
Crazy Taxi.
I didn't actually have a Dreamcast, so I was more of a PlayStation. Nintendo guy, but
me too. I had a Dreamcast for some weird reason. We were a PlayStation family though. Crazy Taxi was a fun game, and Tony Hawk, of course.
Oh yeah,
please continue.
Yeah, no, so many. I have so many memories of like all the games from that era. Yeah, video games.
Yes, nostalgia.
Yeah, huge nostalgia from back then. So what I mean, once you collect, like you said earlier, you can collect a lot of these pre-modern cards. The grades you've gotten are not easy to find for anyone who searched in the space, and so that gives you that level of chase. Like that's something to be said for PSA 10s. It gives you that chase for the pre-modern cards. But kind of once you check all the pre-moderns off the list, like where do you go with Henry? And I there's been a lot of discussion. Topps is really trying to rake in the bucks by doing post-playing days cards, but you definitely dive into some post-playing days Henry, and I don't know if I think you mentioned offline that you're still kind of formulating your mindset for this, but where are you at right now in terms of your mindset of the post-playing days with Henry, who arguably is probably your biggest player chase?
Well, I'm really happy you asked me on, James, because I was thinking about it in, just to have some meat on the bone for this convo. And I was like, I have not really thought that much about it. Like I haven't objectively said like, this is the way that I approach post-playing days, because Henry's career ended in, his last quote unquote playing days cards, unless you're a total Euro snob, is the 2014 MLS Topps Chrome set. That's how you and I kind of, I think, broke bread initially over
Yeah.
Instagram. Was like I had graded a 2014 MLS Topps Chrome Gold Thierry Henry gem, and you had bought a gem copy, and it was a pop two. So like you and I had the two copies. I think there's a third now, but that's how we started chatting. Was I was like, oh,
Yeah.
James, he's buying a little Henry.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
there's the card. Great card. So this is the last, what I would consider playing days card
Yeah.
set of Henry. Now, 2015, there's Henry appeared in one Topps set called Premier Gold, and you've talked a lot about that. Damien at Retro Soccer Cards does a great series on that. I hope you guys don't talk about that anymore, because I still want way more of those cards and I want them to stay cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
But so Henry was in an insert called All Time Accolades from that set, horizontal card. It had the Topps Premier Golds
Right.
parallel structure, which is like the orange out of 11, black out of 25, etc.
Yeah, okay.
And then
You have that? Do you have that here?
It's not on my page. No,
It's on your page. Oh, okay.
not on my page. I have a purple, and the Henrys never sell. So if you go to
Okay.
if you search up the history, there's not many sales of that over the past 5 years or ever. So, in thinking about this, like just cutting to the chase, like I've really landed in a place where like I collected the cards that were available at the time. Now we're entering this absolute fire hose of Henry post-playing days cards with Topps. And there's going to be a lot more options. And you've touched on this really beautifully, which is like in previous episodes, which is the supply of these things is just going to keep going. And even if a card is numbered to 5, or is a 101, or is a out of 10, or is an on-card auto,
or it could be beautiful too. I mean, a lot of them are beautiful.
Yeah,
so it's just
they are.
Yeah.
And the mindset that you take to this hobby after a while is scarcity. Is going to protect the money that I'm spending, because if I can buy this card later, why don't I just buy it later when it's oftentimes cheaper, right? So it's like finding those cards that are hard to find and hopefully do go up in value. If you ever do need to consolidate, you haven't taken a bath on the card. So I guess where I land is like I really fell into, and I'll tie back into your Panini Golden Age episode, that these are the cards that I have gravitated towards for Henry's post-playing days. It's 2017 Panini Immaculate, which is the first year of that Henry had an on-card auto. And those are all national team kits. There's 2017. Yep, that one right there.
One okay.
And that has the kind of the checking another box of being jersey numbered card, which I've talked about before as well. Yeah. The Revolution is another set. I don't know if that's on my page, but Henry appeared in a Barcelona kit in the Revolutionaries insert.
Yeah.
Oh, it is on my page. Great. Yep.
Yeah, and I will say, I think I touched on it when well, maybe I didn't touch on it. Rooney had a Legends insert in 2020, and so finding the Galactic of that I thought was really cool. Even though it was playing days.
Yeah, and Nobility is a set that you and I both love. France and Barca kit again.
Yeah, I just haven't. I've been like coveting a lot of cards from that set. I just never. The ones I really want, I don't come up very often.
And that'll keep you chasing.
Yeah. So it keeps the chase, but I just I want to be intentional with it. Sometimes I really, I'm a voyeur with a lot of these sets, and I'm just like kind of biding my time, hoping for certain cards from the set to pop up. Because like the Platinum Rooney and the Manchester United for the for club would be would be unbelievable. I got the gold one, which was awesome, but it'd be awesome to get the 1 of 1 of that. But
that card is sick. And
um,
so you know what? Here's the interesting part is like he didn't appear in an Arsenal kit in any of these like Golden Age sets until 2019 Prism. So that's like he appeared in 2 inserts. There's the legendary talents and the legendary signatures, I believe it is, sticker autos. The golds were something I was chasing. I came across a gold power out of 5 of the legendary talents insert. And that was, I picked that up last year. That was a huge card for me in terms of my like post playing days collection for him. And then kind of just trying to speed ahead a little bit to actually make my point here about like where I think I'm at is, and then immaculate or sorry, impeccable as well. So impeccable. And I know you and I have talked about those cards a little bit. It's not like the highest end set, but there are like there's these, I believe they're called like the stats cards. They have typically they have a number, it's the jersey number or how many goals they scored in a year, etc. They're typically numbered, serial numbered to that particular number.
Yeah, that's somehow associated with the whatever feat that they accomplished.
Yep. And there's Henry has a 2021 impeccable that's not on my page. That's the 2024, but that's a similar card, what you're seeing on the screen right now. And it's Henry, and like I believe it's a Dreamcast kit. It's a horizontal card, and it says 44, and it's the number of goals that he scored in the 2002-2003 season. On card auto, I mean, that's the best part about impeccable for me.
Yeah.
That's a card I don't have and I really want, but I think these impeccable cards have really filled a niche for me in terms of like Henry has a lot of sticker autos. He's going to continue to have a lot of sticker autos. You've talked about that in past episodes. So I've really gravitated towards these impeccables. The golds when they are structured more standard in a standard way. So I go for the out of 10s if I can. And I believe I have the 2021 like legendary talents or whatever it's called, and the 2023. And so those have been big cards for me. And I think where I've landed with this is like there's no common consensus for how you should collect post playing days cards. I was thinking about this. Let me know if you think this is too hot a take, but I think post playing days is a little bit like the unaffiliated, like unworn patches that we see, inserted into cards. So like, if you have a match worn jersey inserted into a card, that is very cool. Like immediately that like gives you some emotional connection to the card in addition to its beauty. But the post playing days stuff is like, they can keep printing these. They're not released within the year that the player is playing. So there's no built-in rarity. There's no built-in emotional connection, and there's no finite amount. So like, how do we make sense out of that? And I don't fully know the answer to that question yet, and something maybe we can try to work through.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, if you buy all the cool looking post playing days cards, you're gonna run out of money really quickly. Just like the nuts and bolts of it. That's just the reality of it. It's not necessarily bad cards or anything like that. If you buy all the post playing days cards and that's what you're buying, and at the prices they go for a lot of times, you're gonna run out of money. And so, and if you try to resell them, once the next year's set comes along, you're probably not going to be able to get your money back for them if you decide you want to collect the next thing, or that's the, I mean, that's, and that, so when as much as I, like to shy away from kind of money, future value type discussions, I mean, that's the nuts and bolts of it. If you want to keep collecting, you have to have money to keep collecting. And if you spend it all on something, then you can't keep collecting type of thing. So, and you don't want to, collect something and then sell it for less money than you would have had if you hadn't collected it. So that's just kind of the nuts and bolts of, realities of, living in a world where, you're paying money for these things you're collecting type of thing.
Yeah.
But
So how do you put rails on that, you know?
yeah,
Like, how do you
that's the
focus? And
y-
you've focused on Galactic. You talked about a Wayne Rooney Galactic. You know, you've talked about like, so how do you do that? Like, do you have any
yes,
point of view?
yeah. So yeah, it is for me. If you're gonna do it, I think, or the way that I think I would do it, and like, is that you pick, if it's a postman, it has to be in a set. The set specifically it comes from has to be important, and obviously it has to look good. And those are kind of like the big things. Like you said, on card autos. I mean, they're going to be more of those. So that's the only thing you have to be a little careful, even though there aren't so many right now. I think in the future, probably, Topps is, better about making more of those. So I think there will be kind of more and more of those over time. So with Dynasty, like everyone's like, oh, first Dynasty, like you do have to do a calculation. Is the fact that it's first Dynasty, like if your players in that, is that going to matter more than second Dynasty? Is there something post playing days more that's going to be up more than that? And I think you could say there could be a narrative for saying the first Dynasty set is going to have cachet, and that could be the thing you're going to go after in the future. I think that like something like that could have some legs. But my only problem with Dynasty is that like with Messi, like how many one of one, it's like, oh, I've got a one of one from Dynasty. Like, well, there are 15 one of ones from Dynasty. So it's like, it's not really a one of one. Like, yeah, it looks different than the other 14 other ones, but like they're 15 one of ones. And so it's just like, it gets pretty subjective on which of those one of ones is the best. And, and the Barcelona ones, those are all post Barcelona playing days. But the Paris Saint-Germain are technically, I think, even though I think they were released after his post playing days, they, I think they were within the year of the set. I think they still fall within playing days. And so like there's a push and a pull with that. Like, do you want the playing days with the PSG, or do you want the post Barcelona playing days? And so there's lots of interesting things with a set like that, which plays into all of these things we're talking about what matters more and things like that. So
yeah.
So that's really the thing. It's like, is the set and the parallel. So like, a lot of people for the 2012 or 13, like Prism, like in other sports, I think it's cool to have like, a Larry Bird, a Magic Johnson, from those sets that are just like so important. So I think that's a cool way to like put a guardrail around it. But just some random card from a random, set that's not like, doesn't have, the set itself doesn't have intrinsic importance. You have to be really careful with those, I think. And yeah, as you said, it's just like, with Henry, like for that 2014 Topps Chrome, like I was collecting, the 2017 Topps Chrome gold set. So this was like, I was like, oh my God, this is like a playing days Henry in like a parallel that looks just like really gets me firing, kind of like the 2017. So this is like, it's close to, playing days, 2017 Chrome Henry that I'll get. And I'd rather have that, even if it's in a Red Bull jersey than, him in like an Arsenal or Barcelona kit from post playing days. And, like as you straddle that kind of, the pre-modern to modern era, like kind of a cool sweet spot for me, which, it's just end of playing career, even if it's not in the jersey you associated with necessarily. Like, I think that's really cool to have from these cool sets from this, kind of this golden age. Even, I guess Topps Chrome is like, as I've alluded to, there's some sets there that actually, there is a golden age of Premier League Topps that doesn't get quite as much notoriety as the Panini cards, which is out there. But collecting like end of playing career cards from players, I think that's a lot of times more fun than, kind of the more numerous pre-modern stuff. And that's kind of a lane that I like. But it's an interesting discussion when you get kind of with Messi. It's like, all of his Argentina cards are technically all playing days cards, like that are being produced now. All the Barcelona cards from like the Topps, club competitions in his Barcelona kit, they're amazing. Like, he's absolutely legendary as a Barca player. I like, I kind of like collecting him more in a Barcelona kit in a lot of ways, because that's, where he played many more games than Argentina. But like, do I want the post Barcelona playing days stuff? Like, for me, the answer is no. Other people, they're tied to him in a Barcelona kit so strong that the answer for them is like, oh, it's still playing days, but even though it's not his Barcelona playing days, and people are very, I have a lot of affinity for those cards, and but that's a little bit dangerous because it'll be post playing days, post Barca playing days cards that'll be printed to infinity. But do the ones that are made while he's still playing, or that there's lots of interesting lanes and like guardrails thinking about these things. And for Messi, there's so much like from that 2014 to 2020, 21 period that it's like firmly Barcelona playing days that you can go after. I'd rather have the numbered out of 199 blue or something, or red out of 149 or whatever from a lot of those like select era stuff, or even the Donruss era stuff. There's a lot of the Donruss era stuff, numbered stuff that I would have that's numbered higher than like a lot of the like a red chrome from 2014 or 2024, like post playing days Barcelona. Like, yeah, it looks really cool, but I'd probably rather have a Donruss, something that looks cool, numbered from like 2015. Like, it's the first time you had kind of numbered Barcelona cards of Messi. Not a set that's talked about a ton, and I think I kind of highlighted that on that episode. There's sets like that are still like, as much as we've discovered a lot of stuff, there's still ways you can dig in there and find some cool stuff, even from that era still, even though so much of it's been kind of pumped to the moon type of thing. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. Set, like I said, like going back to the poll, I think set is like, and lineage like really matters, like in terms of when you're putting your guardrails up. And I think a lot of the hobby alludes to it, but as it's breaking it down, like that's, like you said, it is a great guardrail to do. And I think that's, to me, what matters the most is finding that a player in a set from a set that matters. And if it's post playing days, that's when you can kind of bend. If you have rules for not collecting post playing days, that's kind of when you can kind of bend that rule. And as far as my collection there one of the playing days cards there's a Stadium Club Iniesta from 21-22. It's a horizontal card. It's right after he scored the goal against Chelsea. He's got the jersey waving it around his head.
I know which one you have.
Yeah, and it's the Superfractor, and it is post playing days. It's like, I think it's probably his second, other than his playing days Barcelona, from 2017 Chrome. It's like, I think it's the next one in that lineage. 2000, I love the Stadium Club sets. It's not the first year of Stadium Club, but it's the first time they put like the post playing days stuff. And so and the image and like the moment that they're depicting, that's another thing that I think could theoretically kind of push you over the edge, maybe to collect a card too, if it is that moment that you're just like associate with the player, that can add a little bit of post playing days magic to, because a lot of times they didn't make those cards with of those specific events at the time when they happened. So occasionally that can add a little juice. You have to be a little careful because obviously they can keep printing those moments type of thing. But those are various things that can add juice to a post playing days card that can make it worth it.
Yeah. Well, okay. That card, James, is like a really interesting example for like the exception to these rules that we create. Yeah. And first off, you and I were talking about a trade or something at one point a year ago, and I inquired about that super, and you were just like, nah, not available. And I respect you so much for that. I figured you would say that. That is I own a gold out of 50 raw copy of that card. And let's see if you can pull it up here.
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I do have it.
Yeah. And I bought it because I wanted to own it. I collect Iniesta. I collect Iniesta gold jersey number. I probably have like 8 or 10 of those now. But it's just such an insane card. He's doing it at Stamford Bridge too. He's just the winner. In the second,
so controversial too. I think it was I think Card Trader Hobbyist, I think is what I trigger him every time I show it. He's just like he's so pissed off again. The refereeing was a bit suspect during that. During that match.
He would. I love it. He's a great collector. He's helped me out with some cards in the past, and hopefully this is triggering us talking about this to Chelsea fans listening.
It's great for Arsenal fans. It's like the Schadenfreude type of thing. But yeah, I have quite a, so there were some like a lot of like pre-modern people were in this set, and the cards were beautiful, beautiful moments. And so I collected a bunch of them in the gold, like because I was like, oh, I love the gold parallel, like, and it's cool to have these images just to kind of look at and appreciate it. And the skulls, especially, I've the auto version of it did come up on Card Hobby and went for like $3,000, which I was like, oh my god, post playing day skulls, like $3,000. It seemed like a lot of the time. I think if the non-auto version came up, I would go pretty strong for that, because it's really the photograph that what gets me for it, not the sticker auto. The sticker auto doesn't add anything, 100%. I think probably visually to me for most of these cards. But yeah, if the non-auto Superfractor skulls from this set comes up, that's I think Matt and I would probably end up maybe dueling that out potentially, but I don't know. But he's not a modern guy, so maybe he wouldn't be in it. But I don't know. There's a lot of collectors who I think would want that card, so it would probably go for a pretty strong price. But this set for pre-modern players post playing days is like kind of a sweet spot for me. They did a lot of them, even the next year with Ronaldinho. His image on that one's really nice. I have a gold version of that, but I've been tempted to buy the Superfractor that's been up for sale a few times, but it's kind of hit the flipper's vortex.
Oh no.
And so I kind of ruined it for me, unfortunately. but I thought that was a cool one as well. But I don't know if there's any other threads on that.
Maybe. I think, one thing you got me thinking about, and I believe you were talking with Matt about this, is like, you guys were talking about, do first matter? And it might have been in regards to post playing days, or no, is it Topps Dynasty? And I think it's a fair question to ask of like, well, first do matter. Like we know first matter to collectors, because the first cards of some of these like legendary sets go for insane money, especially in like basketball. It just got me thinking about like, okay, Topps Dynasty, does the first year of Topps Dynasty matter? We'll find out. We'll find out in 10 years.
Find out, yeah.
And I think always, right. And I think I was like, so what's going to lead to it mattering? And something I keep coming back to is just like, and something that your series is doing such a good job of covering, providing content for people to listen to who think about it this way, is like, so much of the content in our space is deals, flipping, etc.
The deals is the hobby. The deals is the hobby, almost not the cards. The cards is almost just the token as to be part of the deals. And
and I really have come to this conclusion for me that like the collector is the hero. And I think if there's somebody who's putting together Topps Dynasty cards, and Topps Dynasty keeps coming out and they're putting together the sickest collection of Topps Dynasty post playing days cards, that's going to help that set. And that's going to help, and I say that because I know I'm going to legitimize that set in my mind. I'm going to think of so-and-so collector who has this insane collection and who's stuck with it, stuck to their guns on it, and it's going to give it cachet. And I think that's the problem with, inserting, this is the first, though, nomenclature right off the bat to a set. And even talking about this stuff today, it's like, again, I don't think that I have not figured out what my post-playing days approach is yet. But the signs that I am trying to communicate outwards, and the things that make me happy when I sit, alone in my basement with my cards like a loser, I am like, it's like the early Panini stuff. And it's not because they're the first per se in my mind, but it's because they're scarce and they're hard to find. And I put a bunch of them together and I love looking at them. And then one other thought I have there is like, with the explosion of Topps, like Topps is going to have some crazy Henri stuff moving forward. And they already have released, they have on-card autos. They finally have the license to to not airbrush the shirt anymore. That's a big no-no for me. Like I avoid those cards personally.
Can you imagine
So
playing a game used patch with the Arsenal gun in it and a card, like auto Henri? Like that's the
would
type
be
of card that
insane.
for post 10 years would be insane. Yeah.
Yeah. And if they do that, that card could that type of card could enter my collection, you know?
Yeah.
But that said, like right now, a place I kind of landed when I was thinking about this episode, subject to change, is like the Panini era is ending. Like I think I I sense they might continue to release like Arsenal and slash just club kits in general under the FIFA license. It
Yeah.
seems like they've been doing that in Select and Optic. So they could continue to do that. But for more or less, you know, for our purposes of this combo, like for me, it's like the Henri cards that are on my page that I've put together from post playing days, from what I think you and I both consider the golden age of Panini cards. That era is over, and there's like a finite amount of them, and they're really hard to find.
Yeah.
And so that's the cachet right there. I think
Yeah.
that's one bullet point that we can apply to like my approach and focus.
Yeah. And you touched on something there, like the collector being the hero. I think every set that becomes popular has to have like, this is just kind of the same idea, just a champion, someone who champions that set and shows their passion for it and is consistent about collecting and showing that passion for it. And that's why all those 90 sets became popular, I think, is that there were very visible people. I'm pretty small potatoes in terms of visibility, but me championing collecting the red set, just
Yeah.
for the people who do listen to me, probably raises the esteem of it. Or people, I think Jamie UK collector collecting the rubies, like Merlin
Yep.
sets, like I think that led to people being like, oh, this is awesome. Or and so I think having people who really champion, or even a player, Harry Kane cards, I think he almost single-handedly manifested, I think, some of the boom that's happened on Harry Kane cards. And I'd like to have him on at some point just to talk about what it feels like to have, you're talking about how this guy's underrated, undervalued, then all of a sudden starts becoming properly valued, and it makes it much harder to collect his cards, and that becomes a problem for you
Yeah.
at some
Double-edged
point. And that,
sword.
and that happens probably, with my red chromes from 2017. I mean, that's probably going to happen to me to a certain extent. Luckily, I've gotten a lot of them, but the ones that I have left probably maybe end up paying a premium that I've created, type of thing. But,
Yeah. Well,
but yeah, like
James, to that end, like an inherent truth that I think exists is like, just to kind of piggyback on this thought again, as the collector as a hero, like these sets and these collectors have done the same thing that everybody else is doing, which is like buy these cards, accumulate them, post them, share them, quote unquote, pump them, right? Like, which is a dangerous thing. Like, sometimes you get to a certain level of people being aware of what you like to collect, and you get confronted with the idea that you're pumping the cards. But I think these collectors do not sell these cards.
yeah,
And I think that's what's important to highlight here too, is like for these sets, and I think you were alluding to this, was just like these 90s basketball collectors, they've collected these cards for 25 plus years at this point, right? And a lot of them have not sold. Sometimes though, the card gets to a certain point and you gotta make that decision. Like I would rather have $100,000
yeah,
to spend on my house or a vacation. It's the sets that get into the place where people are buying the cards, they're posting them, but then you see the cards for sale. And I think that's just the cautionary tale for anybody listening to this who's newer, is like it gets really exciting to buy these cards and see people posting them, but then they start selling them. And so thinking about post playing days cards in general, going to be an infinite number of them. What are those cards that really, there's a phrase for it, diamond hands, like who is collecting these cards and actually holding on to them in earnest for a
yeah,
decade or more?
yeah,
And we'll have to find out.
yeah. In terms of value, yeah, seeing, and I've heard this, and I've talked with this about I guess people in DMs for like years. It's just, there's certain people who really pound this drum. Is if you really want to see which cards are important, like know who the other collectors are who have these cards, and if you know their intentions for them, is it to hold them? Is it to, kind of talk them up and then throw them on your story sale, open to offers? You know, that really tells you about what the future of, in terms, especially from a financial point of view, or just from a Steam perspective, about which cards are going to be important in the future. That's a huge driver of it, because if it's a set that's just flipped around, I think it really devalues in people's minds that people aren't buying it and holding it. Like, why are you selling it? Like, it's such an amazing card. Like, why are you selling it? Like, it's, the card starts to lose credibility. But
Yep.
all
And
right.
I know we're going long.
Yeah, no,
but
you're right.
it's a really interesting time. This is a great topic. I really appreciate us talking about this. It's subject to continue to evolve. The point I wanted to make was, like, we're in this place now where, like, they're Messi, Ronaldo, all of these legends, Ronaldinho, even Iniesta. Like, if you think about it, some of these guys have not been. Some of these guys are still playing later days of their career. Some did not retire that long ago, and I think that's what's fascinating. Is, like, we're kind of in this early era of post playing days for a lot of very legendary players. And remains to be seen, like, how those dynamics evolve.
Yeah, and I'll be interested observer just as much as anything. We all have our, or at least we have our finite lanes, and so most of the cards out there we're just observers on. So it's interesting for me to follow and find out, see what other people value, and that's why your page has always been so interesting to me, because it's just some of the ways you collect kind of informs me, like, to tie it back to the beginning, informs me about what, collecting in this modern era, when there are a million parallels and a million sets, like how can you form this lane? And, doing the jersey number lane is a way where you can, have a scarcity, a uniqueness in a sea of just so much chaos, as you put it. And it brings some order to that collecting and that search. And that was like one of the reasons I really wanted to highlight the whole jersey number concept, because in this modern era where there's so many parallels, if you really like the gold, but you feel like it's, numbered out of too many, and you really want to bring order to the chaos, the jersey numbered search is a really interesting, as way you've highlighted, fun way to do it. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring about, to, like, have, reason it'd be fun for viewers to, listen to, learn from kind of this type of thing, is that there are these just ways to bring order to the chaos that makes a modern collecting not as daunting as it feels like, with just the sea of chaos. But anyway, I really appreciate you coming on. I don't know, any last thoughts before I let you go? We hopefully we're not putting anybody to sleep with our sometimes I put podcasts on in my headphones as I'm going to sleep, but hopefully people will keep people awake with our our nerd off here. So
No, I appreciate you having me on. This has been a great series. I hope you keep going, and if you are listening to this to go to bed, I hope sweet dreams. But yeah, let's just keep talking about it. And if you listen to this and anything resonated, or you, like, really, I mean, I just love the combos. Like, I don't, if there's any takeaway from this, I don't take offense to much. I think my approach has plenty of holes in it. And I love talking about how people view different things, view collecting in general. And I love hearing about collectors building awesome collections. So if you're building an awesome collection of something that I, maybe dumped on during this episode, let me know and tell me why I'm wrong. Cause I love hearing that kind of stuff. And thank you, James, for having me on.
Yeah, I try not to dump on be too mean to stuff I dump on anymore. But yeah, no, I'm always open. If you have a passion about something, you can explain it to me, then that's awesome. I love hearing about all that stuff. So, all right, thanks again for having for joining me on here. And until next time, stay curious and keep collecting.